Hey guys, and welcome to this video on money. How to make money according to your astrology chart. I'm Cassandra the Saffron Sage, helping you use astrology to evolve, and today we're talking about money. How to make money using your astrology. I'm going to tell you everything I can tell you in one video about money and the chart. So that means what houses in the astrology chart rule money? Okay, what element are your money houses and what that means about your career, what you need to do to make money, basically based on the planets in your second house, and what area of life, industry, or topic you could focus on to make money. There's a lot of things in the chart to look at to really understand how to make money, and I'm going to tell you as much as I can in this video, but just know that if you want more, you can always book a reading with me, which, speaking of money, they are 50% off. So if you do want to get a reading, they're 50% off through the 27th. Click the link below to go ahead and book. Moving on to the video. Number one, the biggest myth about this topic that I always hear people talk about is that your 10th house planets indicate your career. Or if you have Jupiter in the 10th house, you're going to be rich. So let's just get rid of these myths that sometimes can be true, but these broad generalizations based on just one planet in a house is not going to tell you your whole money story, because there's so much more to know about it. Okay, Jupiter in a money house can be good, but it can also mean that you don't try very hard, right? Jupiter or Venus. Sometimes that can make it too easy. So while sometimes, yes, Jupiter in the 10th can help you have a better career than someone who doesn't have Jupiter in the 10th, but you still have to work for it, and it doesn't guarantee success. It just, wherever you have Jupiter will help. And if you have problems in that area, Jupiter will make the problems a little bit less bad. So you cannot tell your whole money story or anything, the story of anything in astrology based on one planet. Okay? End rant. To really understand how you're going to make money based on your astrology chart, we need to look at the houses, okay? So I'm going to tell you which houses in the chart are the money houses. We have the second house. This is your money, okay? The money that you have, how much you can make, the skills that you bring to the table to make money, your possessions, the things you own, including your property, your car, your everything you have, including down to the food that you eat in your fridge, because that is part of what you own. Okay, so the second house tells us about your money. It tells us your natural inclination toward money. Are you inclined to work hard for it? Are you inclined to wait and let it come to you? Are you inclined to avoid the hell out of it and never deal with it and have problems? Are you inclined to, always focus on it and never stop? Are you obsessed with it, right? So what sign you have on that second house cusp, what planets you have in that second house, tell us about how you relate to money. That's what the second house tells us. It can tell us a little bit about what qualities you could use to make money as well, especially based on the planets in that house. We can look at your sixth house. Now, the sixth house doesn't really indicate money, but the way it's connected to money is that it indicates work. Okay, it indicates maybe your ideal work environment, what kind of work schedule you can handle. Right? Aquarius, do you need a more random, changing, always, have freedom, or every day doing something different kind of a schedule? Or, is it Taurus or an earth sign where you need to do the same thing every day and you can really handle a routine where you're doing things day in and day out? So the sixth house doesn't tell you how much money you're going to make from the work you do, but it can give us an idea of what your work ethic is, how much time you're going to spend being of service, because the sixth house is also service. And people with strong, positive sixth house planets can actually become known by doing a body of work. So sixth house is like the humble work that we do. Sixth house transits tell us times where we are working hard on something, but we're not necessarily during that sixth house transit going to get the outcome at that time. But it's good to know when things are transiting your sixth house, because then you know when to double down and get really good at something. Now moving on to the eighth house. The eighth house indicates resources from others. So the seventh house in astrology is our partner, and the eighth house is our partner's money. So this kind of tells us, are we people who could get money in a relationship? Are we people who could marry into money? Are we people who can invest? The eighth house also rules like taxes, inheritances, other people's money in that respect, investments, risky investments. So, those kind of things are going to fall in the eighth house. Are you going to owe money in a divorce? That kind of stuff is going to show up in your eighth house. And then we have the 10th house. The 10th house is the work we do in the world. The 10th house doesn't really indicate the money we'll make from that work, but it does tell us what kind of work we could possibly do and what we're most likely to be known for. Now, that being said, if we really understand our 10th house and we're doing things that are aligned with it, it's likely we could make more money, right? It's likely that if we get good at what we do and people appreciate it and we're doing the thing that's aligned, we'll make more money than if we're not in alignment with that 10th house. But the 10th house is the public house, our public image, our brand, the brand of our company. And the 10th house ruler, the midheaven ruler, can tell us a lot about what kind of work we do. The 10th house will tell us some, but the placement of the ruler of the 10th house, that's where you're going to look to find out either what job you have or what industry you may want to go into. So now the 11th house. The 11th house, although many people don't know this house has to do with money, the reason is because it's the second from the 10th. So this is the money you make from the work you do in the world, okay? This is the money you make from the work you do. It's that simple. So really understanding that 11th house ruler can help. You don't have to master it, but it's like if you're not making money from that 10th house work, it's worth it to kind of look at that 11th house and see what the connection is or what the problem is. So step one is we're going to talk about the elements on the 2nd, 6th, and 10th, because the way that astrology chart is set up, your 2nd, 6th, and 10th house, at least in whole sign, will be the same element. Now, if you're reading a Placidus chart and you're like, but my 2nd house has air and then my 6th house has a different element, then you can go ahead and watch both parts of the video. It's fine. But I've broken this down by rising sign to just make it a little bit easier. So for fire rising signs, that would be Aries, Leo, and Sag. That means you have Earth on your 2nd, 6th, and 10th house. People with Earth on these houses can do physical work. They can do work related to hospitality, the service industry. They can do things that are really hard. They can own businesses. They can build things. They can do things that are humble, a humble service, things where they are working with people, helping people, doing physical stuff. So these are like the waiters and the hospitality industry, or people who build houses, or people who work with the land in any capacity. This could be like digging things up. It could be anyway, in any possible way, working with the land, tending to the land, landscaping, building things on the land, doing things that are outside. All that kind of stuff is going to be under earth signs. Now, sometimes the earth signs on the 2nd, 6th, and 10th, you can do really hard work. You can do labor. You don't have to necessarily, but oftentimes it's going to deal with the physical world in some way. So maybe you're not the laborer, but you work at a construction company and your job is like foreman and you're more in charge or something, right? So you don't have to necessarily be getting down and dirty to have earth on these signs, but you can also do things that are oftentimes working with people, working with the land, doing things that require a lot of work ethic, or working in those kind of fields, real estate, things like that. Okay, so then for Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn risings, that means your 2nd house is air. So if you have air on your 2nd, 6th, and 10th houses, this means you can work doing things that require communication. So this can be anything where you are speaking or talking or listening or, writing. So this can be any kind of field where that is necessary. So, from being a newscaster or a podcaster or reporting on something, to being a receptionist or secretary, or, helping someone. I guess secretary is an outdated word, so I shouldn't say that, but being a receptionist or doing other kinds of like assistant type work that requires communication, emailing people, creating funnels, doing things where you are using words, copywriting, singing could possibly be one, but it really is about the communication between people. Sales is an air sign type of business, writing books, doing things that require reading and writing, anything where you are using words. Sometimes professors, especially ones who teach topics related to language, but really professors of all kinds, people who use their mind, right? Using your mind, thinking, discourse, all of these topics can be factored into the work you do. If your rising sign is Gemini, Libra, or Aquarius, that means you have water on your 2nd, 6th, and 10th house. So water type jobs are things that deal with the emotions. These are the preschool teachers and the counselors of the zodiac, the chemical dependency counselors, and people who in some way, shape, or form use empathy, emotion, or compassion in their work. Now, this isn't always going to be like counselor type people. It can be. It can also be working in fields that are highly emotional. So like, doing family law, or, other things where maybe the skills you're doing aren't emotional, but the work that you're connected to has to do with human emotions and helping people through emotional times. So that's one way that can show up. Water signs also can be very creative. They can do work that is creative and that's like using their creativity. Getting into a flow. That is another way that those emotions can express, right? Because poetry can happen with water signs, or things that move you, right? So even in some cases, this is going to depend on the rest of the chart, but like creating things that move people, doing things that move people emotionally. So you could be a speaker with water on your 2nd, 6th, and 10th houses, but if you did, you would be a very emotional, deep, speaker or thinker. So it's all about going to the emotional depths, being there for people, nurturing all the different people, having compassion for all the different people, and using those skills in your work. Now, not all water sign jobs are going to be like therapist, right? So sometimes you could be like a bartender where you're just making people feel comfortable, or, you could do like, you could be a coach, right? Where you're just very welcoming, you have this way to make people feel okay. And that can be done in fields that maybe aren't water, right? So like you could work in a field like hospitality, and you can be the person who really makes all the customers feel really good. You could be a waiter with this and make everyone feel good, and have your gift be, like emotional mastery in some way or another. So next is Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces. You guys are water rising signs, which means you have fire on your 2nd, 6th, and 10th house. If you have fire on your career houses, then you're going to most likely do something that involves passion, movement, starting things, creativity, things that are fast-paced and exciting. Now that's the most in alignment just based on those houses. So, fire signs for work, this is going to be stuff like having your own business. This is going to be stuff like wanting things to move forward, directing things. Sometimes fire can be like in charge, but usually fire is passionate and it's stimulating. So you can do work that is stimulating where you're fast paced and you're taking lots of action. You can do creative work that's exciting and fun. You could run a business or work for a business that's really fast paced and everything's just happening. There's a sense of growth and expansion here for people with fire signs on their career houses, where it's like it has to keep moving forward. And if it doesn't keep moving forward, you might not be interested. So if you don't resonate with this, keep in mind that you could have planets in your 2nd, 6th, or 10th house, and the planets override the energy of the sign on the cusp. So let's say you're a Leo rising and you have Earth on your 2nd, 6th, and 10th house. And you're like, no, I'm super passionate. I always want to start things. Well, maybe you are a Leo rising with Mars in your 2nd house, right? And in that case, that Mars is going to override the Earth element. So just keep that in mind for the elements as a starting point. They are just a starting point. So now moving on to the planets. What planets do you have in your second house? You can take your chart out and look and come back to this video because we're going to go through each planet. And again, keep in mind the planet will take over. So if you have let's say you're a Virgo rising, you have Libra on your second house, and then you have Jupiter in that house. Jupiter is ruled by Sagittarius, and then Jupiter takes over that Libra energy. So one of the things to know is when you have a planet in the second house, you really need to embody that planet in the positive way to make money. And so sometimes those planets can help us, sometimes they can hinder us, and I'll try to talk as much about those things as I can. Number one, the sun. If you have the sun or the moon in that second house, money, it matters to you a lot. You are going to want to make money, or occasionally, guys, you might have that placement and you'll be the opposite where you're like, I don't want to have money. But either way, the topic of money is important. Usually sun or moon there is you're going to want to have enough money. With the sun, this is more of a simple, direct, straightforward energy. With the moon, there's usually more emotional insecurity. So people with moon in the second usually do have plenty of money because they feel really not okay emotionally if they don't have it. Remember, we cannot ignore the needs of our moon more than any other planet because it's what we need to be okay. So someone with moon in the second house needs to get to a place of financial stability in life to be okay. And, there's a certain level of comfort that they may not feel until they have that. Now, the flip side of this is sometimes the person with the moon in the second will always feel insecure, even if they have a lot of money. So this placement doesn't make you rich or poor. Because some people with moon in the second will be like, I'm broke and it sucks, and some people with moon in the second will be like, I have all this money, but what if I lose it, right? And so learning how to sort of manage that moon and trust the money that you have, if that is the case, it can be important. But someone with moon in the second kind of always is going to want to make sure they're okay financially. If you have Mercury in that second house, that means you think about money a lot. You might think about how you're going to spend it a lot. You might, want to think about the plans you're going to make it with or whatever. Mercury in that second house, there's thinking about money. It can also bring money from activities that are Mercury related. So that's going to be speaking, writing, communicating. Venus, if you have Venus in your second house, you have no problem receiving money. And this can work for you or against you because it can allow you to be open to receive. But sometimes Venus in the second, the challenge here is that it doesn't give you the drive to go make the money. It just gives you the ability to say, okay, I'll take that. Thank you. And just be able to allow it in. So this matters because some people will push away money if it's just given to them. Now, I'm not saying if you have Venus here that everyone's just giving you money, but if you were in a situation of sharing resources and someone did give you money, this Venus, it makes it more of a compatible thing. To be in a situation where maybe you are not the breadwinner, if that's what you want. Or, there can be a refinement here, a desire for nice things. And so sometimes the Venus in the second will find ways to make good money because they want to have the nice things. There's high values here. Expensive taste, can be Venus in the second house. Sometimes when it comes to what you do with Venus in the second, like you can deal with things related to the field of beauty or harmony, things that are aesthetically pleasing. You could make money doing art or makeup or, things that make things more harmonious and pleasing to the eye. You could also deal with, Venus is also like our social life, right? So sometimes people with Venus in the second can be skilled at doing work that requires networking because they have that ability to socialize and make money off of it. Sometimes you are the thing that makes money, like your own beauty. Okay, if you have Mars in your second house, you will want money, you'll be driven and motivated to have it, and you will probably have to work hard for it. So Mars in the second house will give you an appetite for money. That does not mean that you will be successful. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to easily make it. It actually kind of means that you'll have to be busy and hardworking and put a lot of effort in to have money. One of the needs of Mars in the second is you really need to be confident in whatever you're doing in order to be able to make money off of it. So if you're a Mars in the second person and you're like, how do I make more money in life? Work on confidence, work on gaining skills that make you confident. You really have to put in a lot of work here to get results. I have this placement and I can verify this is 100% true. the more confident you are, the more money you can make. And just know that if you're not confident and you have Mars here, you can build that. If you have Jupiter in the second house, you can be lucky with money, but this is not the most motivating placement. Oftentimes people with just Jupiter here will kind of not always think that much about money, not always, prepare or plan. They'll just kind of think that it's going to work out, and because of that it kind of does, right? That's one of the benefits of Jupiter, is that it gives you a bit of a positive outlook, like, of course that I'll be able to pay that bill that I don't have the money for. And it doesn't usually end up in a bad thing. It kind of is like, that Jupiter second house person will be like, oh, of course I'll get a new job, and then they do, because that Jupiter there brings that optimism, and then it just, because you believed it happened, kind of a thing. So this is why people with Jupiter in their second house, sometimes they do make more money. It's like they believe it, then it happens, and they believe it and it happens. Saturn, if you have Saturn in the second house, oftentimes people with Saturn here will have a lot of money because they have the discipline to make it. With Saturn here, you might have to work hard, like especially in the beginning, to make sure you are being the most responsible and the most in integrity with money. You can't cut corners financially. You can't apply for a job you're not qualified for and then wing it, right? It's like a slow build to success. So you can slowly build wealth with this placement by learning how and following the rules of whatever industry. Saturn in the second house can also do positions, work in a role where you are the very responsible one. Sometimes they can be the boss or be someone who's put in charge of a lot of things, or put in charge of important things. Sometimes Saturn here, though, can bring a pessimism toward money, because Saturn restricts, and sometimes wherever we have Saturn, it's like where we have the most negative attitude. So you can feel like there's not enough money, right? You can feel like there's never enough. It's always hard to get. I always have so many problems. But wherever we have Saturn is also the greatest potential for mastery if we learn the lesson of Saturn, which is to be disciplined, hardworking, set big goals over time, and do the work it takes to reach those goals. So for someone with Saturn here, one person could just really struggle throughout their life. Other people with Saturn here could struggle and then embrace the struggle that will get them to the top, kind of a thing. The thing about Saturn here too is that you need to feel like you deserve what you're making. So whatever that means for you, you need to feel like you have done the work to deserve it. If you have Uranus in your second house, sometimes you can work online. You can have sudden bursts of money come in where you get a big payment and then nothing, and then another payment, or do types of work where freelance work or something else where it's you get paid a lot at once and then time goes by and then you get paid again, because Uranus has that start-stop energy. You could also have times in life where you start or stop making money, where that is kind of the flow, where it's either on or it's off, that kind of thing. You can also do work in fields that Uranus rules, which would be science, technology, math, things that are a little different, things that are online, working online, or things that are outside of the status quo, things that other people think are strange or weird. You can do that. And sometimes you might like to do different types of work, because with Uranus here, it's there's a need for change. There's an impulsiveness that sometimes we can just want freedom. So you could really have a desire for financial freedom, or have values when it comes to money that are different than other people's. You could be the one who says you don't want money and you want a cashless society, or you could be the one who says that we should all barter and work on a farm and eat our own food, and be kind of like that too, like an off-grid type of person. That's just one manifestation. It's not everyone. Sometimes people with Uranus here can have a hard time impulse buying, so that is something to know. The next one is Neptune. If you have Neptune in your second house, sometimes you can make money off of spiritual work. You can also feel more confused about money, because wherever we have Neptune, it's it puts a fog around that topic for us. So that's just one thing to know. And Neptune also rules avoidance. So when we have Neptune in the second, it's we could avoid dealing with money. We could be the kind of people who are oh, I wish that just would work itself out, And so it doesn't mean you definitely always avoid with this placement, but just that if you could choose to not have to focus on it, because Neptune is where we diffuse our focus. You'd probably prefer that. People with Neptune in the second are not going to want to like track every expense kind of a thing. They just won't enjoy that. Sometimes where we have Neptune is where we need to feel inspired, or sometimes where we have really, really high ideals and don't know how to reach them. So if you have Neptune here, you could have a super, super high dream of being a millionaire, but are you on the track for that? The problem with Neptune sometimes is that we have no idea how to go step by step into what we want to do. We just feel so connected to the dream. And then last thing about Neptune here is that Neptune can dissolve. Okay, so I don't think this means if you have Neptune here, it's going to dissolve your money. But if you resonate with that, that's a possibility. That it's like when you do spend money, it's like, I don't even know where that went. It's not like, I impulse bought these 5 things and I can tell you what they are. It's like, I had money in my wallet and then 2 days later, I got to my last dollar and I don't know what happened. Right? So that could be one of the challenges with Neptune here. I do feel like people with Neptune in the second house really need inspiration in order to make money. Sometimes you can make money from Neptunian things like art or creativity or poetry or healing work, just depending on other placements. And last but not least, Pluto. If you have Pluto in the second house, you could be very controlling around money. You could feel a need to control. You could feel very powerless over money. Pluto in the second, these are going to be people who can have the potential to make a lot of money, but you have to change everything if you want to do that, because Pluto transforms through destruction. Sometimes people with Pluto in the second will lose things. They'll lose their stuff. They'll lose their possessions. It's like Pluto burns it off, and then you have to rebuild and rise from the ashes like a phoenix again. You could have more than one of those in your life. Sometimes people with Pluto in the second will get rich and lose it all. Other people will build wealth over time. You can become very wealthy with this placement if you put energy into the right things. As far as what kind of job or work you could do with Pluto here, with Pluto in the second house, some traditional kind of Pluto type jobs would be anything where you're doing like psychology, helping people get to the root cause of something, anything where you are working with things that are hidden or secrets, anything where you work with stuff that's underground. Not everyone, but some people with Pluto in the second could work with like coal or oil or natural resources, or in dentistry or surgery, or other things that Pluto rules like that, other fields that Pluto rules that are underground, that are unseen. I guess some people could work with insects in some way because Pluto rules all the creepy crawly things of the world. Some people could do seedier things, but you don't have to. Just because you have that potential to transform doesn't mean you're going to. And usually in order to really master Pluto in the second or in any house, you have to learn the polarity point. So for people with Pluto in the second, this is going to be the 8th house. And I have a whole other video on Pluto in the second you can watch if you have this placement. That's more about the evolutionary lessons of your soul. But because Pluto's in the second house, mastering those can help you to make money. That's what I have for the planets in the second house. Now we're going to talk about what house is your money planet in. This is the house of your money planet, aka your second house ruler. So in astrology, we have houses, right? The second house is the money house. Whatever sign you have on the cusp of that second house is ruled by a planet. And when you see where in your chart that planet sits, that's going to tell you more about how you can make money. So we're going to go through, I'm just going to tell you what house to look at for this, because if I did all of these, it would be like 144 different ones. So if you have an Aries rising, that means your second house is ruled by Venus. So look to what house Venus is in your chart, and later in this video, I'll tell you what to focus on by house. Taurus rising, look at where Mercury is. So this part is just a list of the planet you need to look at to understand your money. So what you're going to do is you're going to figure out which one you are, what planet that is, and then look at where that planet is in your chart. What house is it in? And then in step 6, we're going to talk about the meaning of the houses. So I'm just going to read my list here. Aries rising, this is the house where Venus is. Taurus, Mercury. If you're Gemini rising, it's the moon. Cancer rising, it's the sun. Leo rising, it's Mercury. Virgo rising, it's Venus. Libra rising, look at Mars and Pluto. Scorpio rising, look at Jupiter. Sagittarius rising, you can look at Saturn. Capricorn rising, look at Uranus. You can also look at Saturn. Aquarius rising, you look at Neptune. You can also look at Jupiter. And Pisces rising, you can look at Mars. The reason some people have two is because there are ancient rulers of the houses and there are modern rulers. And whenever I am looking at a house, like let's say Capricorn rising, they have Aquarius on their second house. So that is ruled by Uranus in modern astrology, and it was ruled by Saturn in ancient astrology, so you can look at both. And if you didn't get to, that's how it goes, okay? That's how it goes, people. That means you have some other house that you have too. Everyone has the same freaking wheel. We all have the same signs, and we all have a house that has two. We all have the same amount, okay? So now going on to step 4, which is the house of your daily work planet, aka the house of your 6th house ruler. This can tell you more about what you can do every day. It's less about how much money you can make, but it helps you tell the whole story. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to tell you a list of the different houses. I recommend you write these down if you need to. And then once we get to the house part of the video, part 6, you'll have an idea of what areas of life to focus on to make money, what areas of life to make money, what areas of life for your daily work, and what areas of life for what you can be known for. So step 4, house of your daily work planet, aka 6th house ruler. More information on what you can do on a daily basis. For Aries rising, you're going to look to the house that Mercury is. Taurus rising, look at Venus. Gemini rising, look at Mars, Pluto. Cancer rising, look at the house of Jupiter. Leo rising, look at the house of Saturn. Virgo rising, look at the house of Uranus or Saturn. Libra rising, look at the house of Neptune and Jupiter. Scorpio rising, Mars. Sagittarius rising, Venus. Capricorn rising, look at Mercury. And Aquarius rising, look at the moon. And Pisces rising, look at the house of the sun. So step 5, we're going to go to the house of your career planet. Okay, so this house is going to be your career planet. This is your 10th house ruler. This is the strongest indicator. Okay, so if you take nothing from this video, figure out what house this 10th house ruler is in your chart, and that will be enough to start. So I'm going to read the list. For Aries rising, look to the house of Saturn. For Taurus rising, look at Uranus. Gemini rising, Neptune. Cancer rising, Mars. Leo rising, Venus. Virgo rising, Mercury. Libra rising, the moon. Scorpio rising, the sun. Sagittarius rising, Mercury. Capricorn rising, Venus. Aquarius rising, Mars. Pisces rising, Jupiter. Now what do you do with all this? You have 3 different houses that now you know the planet that rules that house, and you're going to find that planet in the chart, and you're going to write down which house is. So money, and write down the house. And then daily work, write down the house. 10th house, what you can be known for, write down the house. Now we're going to go through what the different houses mean if one of your money planets or career planets sit in them. Now keep in mind, this is like a simple breakdown made to be followed by beginners. And if you want a more in-depth breakdown, let me know in a comment below if you guys want a course on this, or you can book a private reading with me. We can go through your whole money profile and even look to the aspects of the different planets. So going on now to the houses. The first house, if you have your 10th house ruler or any of your other planets in that first house, you can be a personal brand, the face of a business. Your identity is wrapped up in that area of life. If it's your 2nd house, your identity is wrapped up in your money. If it's your 6th house, your identity is wrapped up in what you do every day, and it's important to you. Sometimes with a planet in this house, again, you can be a personal brand, an ambassador, someone who is a spokesperson. You can have your own social media and be your own personal brand that way. You can use your body or your personality in your work. You can be doing yoga and teaching people how using your body, or doing other work that uses your body, like a fitness instructor, something where you're physically doing it. That's another thing. Anything else using your body or focused on the body. Exercise can be that, not always. Sometimes that'll be in the 6th. So now the 2nd house. if one of your rulers is in the second house, this is about money. So if your second ruler is in the second house, you really need to master that planet even more to make money. So just think of that as a stronger indicator, usually a positive indicator. Second house is going to be selling physical products, work related to possession. So like owning things, selling things, anything, digital products or physical products, selling real estate, selling stocks, selling anything. If your midheaven ruler is in the second house, that can be that money is important to you. If your sixth house ruler is in the second, it can be that every day you work hard to make money, or you need to be doing it every day, or the things you do every day help you make money, is kind of what that means. Now, thinking about how that can translate into career, if your sixth ruler is in the second and you're trying to make passive income, this might not be aligned. We'd have to look at the other placements, but sometimes this is the financial industry or ownership as a career or as a career field. Third house, communication. Okay, the third house is writing, speaking, teaching, especially, elementary education. Some people with their midheaven ruler in that third house, it's going to be a preschool teacher, something like that. But it can also be transportation. So it can be like Uber drivers or, other kind of like little trips like that. But mostly some people with this placement will work with their siblings. Some people will do things in their environment, like teach classes in the environment about any kind of thing, any kind of topic, but not always. It really can be like communicating, teaching, speaking, educating, things where you are just like chatterbox all the time, anything like that. Fourth house, can be a home-based business. Sometimes it's real estate. You can work from home with this placement. Sometimes it's a family business. Sometimes it's related to lineage or emotional security. Some people will like buy land or do retreats or something else that really deals with buying the land or using the land or permits and like getting something on a piece of land or something like that as well. The fifth house, this is going to be creative passion, children, self-expression, gambling, entertainment, bars, nightclubs, or anything people do for fun. So, with fifth house, like if your midheaven ruler is in the fifth house, it's likely you could have a career where you're doing something that's really creative, you're expressing yourself, you own a bar, you own a tavern, something that it like has to do with like nightlife, the entertainment industry. But again, it can also be you expressing yourself. It can be a creative thing that you turn into a job. Sometimes this is like business owners will have this. It can also be you write children's books or do something else related to kids. Next one is sixth house. This is like service jobs, not-for-profits. This is things where you are taking care of people or nurturing them and meeting their needs. Sometimes this is healthcare. Sometimes like nurses or people in the healthcare industry will have their 10th house ruler in the sixth house. But it can be any kind of like service type work. So that can be from being a cashier at a store to being a drug and alcohol counselor, anything that's considered service. Again, nonprofits. There's also daily routines go in the sixth house. So it's possible you could do work where you're somehow helping people with their daily routine. Fitness, this can be fitness, the health and fitness industry, wellness, or again, the medical industry. The seventh house, this is relationships, love. It doesn't mean you have to work with relationships, but you can. Sometimes people with their midheaven ruler in the seventh, they just really need their partner to be with them in order to be happy in their work, or they get a lot of benefit from doing like a partnership where they are both like, like two people who run a business, and it's like, it means happiness to them. Sometimes they have a partner who they rely on for support to have their business, or if they're not with the right significant other, it kind of affects their work. Other times, this can be focusing on relationships as an industry, right? So if you're a coach, coaching people on love or relationships, or writing books on it, or, anything connected to helping people find partners or be better in love, or, know more about sex or anything. You can also do one-on-one client work with this placement sometimes. So sometimes like therapists will have this placement. This can also be like business partnerships. So you end up having a business partnership at some point in your life. And that's really what we have for the 7th house. So for the 8th house, when it comes to money, especially that 10th house ruler, you're going to have a lot of different possibilities here. So you'll just have to take what resonates and leave the rest. We have the money side of the 8th house, which is like taxes, real estate. No, not real estate. Taxes, estates, accounting, somehow managing other people's money, right? So like being an accountant or being a financial advisor or working in the financial industry, especially with risky investments, helping people investing yourself. Those things can go in that 8th house, managing wealth in any way. Now, the 8th house can also be making deep connections with people. So you could do something related to intimacy, some kind of work that takes people to the other side. Mediumship comes here. Even sometimes like people who do like ayahuasca ceremonies, like that might fall in the 8th house. Sometimes that level of transformation that you find. Or, you could even see someone who's like a sex therapist with this. Like sexuality is also an 8th house topic. So fields that are related to sex in any way, from, selling products to education to, some people might do sex work. I'm not saying all of you guys do, but there are some people with that 8th house, that midheaven ruler in the 8th house, or, their 8th house ruler in the 2nd. Those are strong indicators for that. What else? Oh, the death industry. That death industry can also be something you make money off of with that 8th house placement. So this can be like, a death doula, someone who helps people cross over, a hospice worker, someone who works in a morgue, the person who, I don't know what else people do when people die, but anyone who works with that whole field. So from the person who counsels the people who deal with grief, like a grief counselor, to the person who goes and picks up the body. All those different people who have those different jobs, making caskets, selling caskets, funeral homes, anything like that as well goes in that 8th house. Again, the other side, psychic work, mediumship, those can go in the 8th house too. So now we're going on to the 9th house. People with their midheaven ruler in the 9th house, they can do higher education. Sometimes they will either be a professor or they will get a high level of education to do what they do. They might travel overseas. They might work with foreigners. They might do something related to faith or belief systems. They could be a preacher of some kind, whether that be a traditional, more traditional religion or more, like a new age thought leader type preacher, someone who helps people understand their belief system, and that is what they do for their job. They can write a book. Publishing goes in the 9th house, so publishing anything. The law, so lawyers, anyone who works in the industry of law altogether. So this can even blend into like police and that kind of thing. But it really is kind of focused on upholding the law. So anything there, unless you're like a prison guard, that would go in the 12th house. So if you work in a prison, that's 12th house work, but everything else dealing with the law mostly is going to be 9th house. Teaching also goes in the 9th house. And oftentimes you're going to see 9th house type teaching is usually going to be more in depth. So you could even be 2 different teachers of the same exact material, but the person with 3rd house placements, they're teaching beginners or they're teaching it in little bits and pieces, where the person in the 9th house placements, they're going to teach a long form body of work, do classes that people have to wait a year to do and run for the whole year, things like that. And pilot also goes in the 9th house. So the 10th house. If you have a planet in your 10th house, this does not tell you what you're going to do in your career as much as that career is really important, especially if it's your 10th house ruler. If your midheaven ruler is in your 10th house, that is a really important planet for you to master and use in your career. And oftentimes it means the planet, the archetype of that planet is the role you have or the thing you do. So an artist will have Venus in the 10th house of Libra, for example. That's going to be someone who does art. Maybe Mars in the 10th is someone who is a police officer or something where they use aggression, or an athlete, something that's the pure energy of that planet. I have another video called Career Mastery where I talk about all the different planets in the 10th house if you want more on that. The 11th house, this is going to be groups of people. Groups like speaking to groups or doing retreats where you are the one, you're the one doing it, having an audience. Sometimes people with 11th house planets, especially their career planets, these are the people who can gain the social media followings. These are the people, sometimes you work in groups, so you're very successful in a group of people. So having an 11th house planet can just mean it doesn't necessarily tell you you're going to do this kind of work, but that the work that you do will be successful if you do it with a group. So like movies, right? Movies are things that groups of people do as their work. Like the cast is a group of people. So that's one way to look at it. It can also be working on teams, like sports, where you do something on a team with a sport, right? You can be successful in a group. You can do anything in a group though. So like writing a book where everyone contributes, or any kind of group activity could be successful. If you're trying to build your social media and you have Jupiter or Venus in that 11th, you can gain an audience. You can gain an audience on social, or even like if you're an actor or anything where having an audience really does makes your work better or is a part of your job. Sometimes politicians will have planets, especially Venus or Jupiter, in that 11th house, because it's like being able to win over a crowd, being able to win over the public. That is the idea behind those planets in the 11th. That's what they can do for you. So that's what I have for the 11th. Sometimes it's going to be being involved in professional associations, right? So that may not be your whole job, but like even if you're like an astrologer, you could be an astrologer who is known for the group of other astrologers that you work with, or is known for being the head of a certain astrology organization or something. Or like volunteering on the panel, not always being the head of it, but being involved in it. 12th house. So if you have a career planet in that 12th house, this is another one that can go many different ways. So one way is spiritual work, anything related to spirituality, the subconscious mind, dreams, interpreting dreams, therapy, therapist, that can be this placement. Sometimes you can help people understand the workings of their subconscious mind. Sometimes it is you who need to uncover the workings of your own subconscious to understand what to do in your career, because anything in that 12th house is a little bit hidden. So sometimes you could do something in secret people don't know about as your job, not judging. You can also do things that are more isolated. You can work in a prison or a hospital or anything where people are isolated from society to go there. Retreats go in the 12th house. Shamanic journeys go in the 12th house. What else? Recovery of all kinds. Okay. 12th house can help people in recovery of all kinds. Oftentimes you're going to want to be of service to humanity. 12th and 6th both have that in common. With 12th house, often it's going to be with people who are more troubled in some way, that have 12th house kind of challenges. Mental health, addiction, criminals, people who are recovering from like criminal behavior, mental health, addiction, recovering from even a physical illness, things like that. It also rules altered states of consciousness. So sometimes you can help someone come back to reality, or you can be the one like in the altered state doing your work. So like trance work, like Edgar Cayce, or like, I don't know if he has this placement, but people who go, again, shamanic journey, people who go to the other place, retrieve the information and give it to the person. That's one way this shows up. Not the strongest indicator, but it's a possibility. Even something like hypnotherapy, where you're taking someone into a different state of consciousness, bringing them back out, helping them understand something about themselves. That is all stuff that you can see in the 12th house. Now, keep in mind that you don't have to be the one taking someone into their subconscious mind to have this placement. Sometimes people are going to be prison guards, right? If you have Mars in the 12th, prison guard. That's one potential manifestation here. Security at a hospital, right? So you could have like a regular everyday job in one of the fields that the 12th house rules, like hospitals, institutions of any kind, treatment centers, places where people go away, they're isolated, they go away, even vacation, I wouldn't say like hospitality as much, but again, retreats, things where you are inviting people to come away and like connect deeper with themselves or heal or recover in some way. Okay, so for this part of the video, we are going to look at the chart of Stephen King, and I'm going to just give you a rundown of an example reading that I would do for his money story. So we're going to start by looking at his second house, having Leo on the cusp. So automatically, this is a fire sign. This is someone who wants movement in their career. They might have a creative passion. It might be passionate. That's all we know here. So we can look to, where is the sun? Well, the sun is in the third house of communication. So immediately we know speaking, writing, communicating. So that's already pretty relevant. And when we see it in Virgo, we kind of can infuse the energy of that sign into it as well. So the sun in Virgo is going to be more particular kind of writing, right? A specific kind of writing. There's a structure and there's a process here with Virgo, with anything Virgo. So it's more of a controlled type of writing. This is not going to be, it's funny because I would say this is not going to be creative writing, but what you can see with Virgo is the perfectionism and the getting the exact word right, or writing that requires precision is what I would say. Very precise type of writing here. So now we're going to look at his sixth house of Sagittarius with Jupiter in the fifth house. So that's going to be, the sixth house with Sagittarius there. This person wants freedom. Okay, someone with Sagittarius on the sixth house, they are going to need freedom in their work. Freedom to expand, freedom to keep getting better. The sixth house is usually where we always want more, okay? So when you have Sag on your sixth, it's like you always want to travel more, or you always want to be, more free, to have more free time in your career, or you always want to make more money for the work you're doing. So I would guess, I wouldn't know for sure, but I would guess it's possible that with him, either he would maybe have ghostwriters, right? And maybe that's not true. I don't know him, so I don't know the story here. But I would think that either that's going to show up as hiring ghostwriters so he doesn't have to do as much and then he has more freedom, or a desire to keep getting better, right? That desire to keep going and just want to always have more free time, want to have more, or workaholic. I always want to write more. I want to write the next story, and thinking about that next story before this story is even finished. Now, that sixth house ruler being in the fifth house of creativity, okay? So here's where we see some of his creativity. What we also see here, though, is that Scorpio, that little mental twist, because we know Stephen King's stories tend to be a little bit twisted, which I love. I mean, I don't think I've read any of his books. I think I've only watched the movies. Sorry, Stephen King. But they were twisted. I mean, I remember watching Tommyknockers when I was little. And I mean, what's the other one with Red Rum on the Wall? I mean, I think there's really always like a mental twist, something scorpionic and hidden and different about his stuff. And sometimes it's like abuse, right? Topics of aliens, or like, I think of like Village of the Damned. Not really aliens, but just creepy underbelly of life kind of things. Moving on now. So what we know from this, second house, Leo, sun in the third. This is going to be something that gains attention, but then with the sun in that third of Virgo, it's in a humble way, which is exactly what a famous writer would do, right? They're going to get attention, but they're not going to be showy. And then that sixth house ruler, always wanting to expand, always wanting more. And in that fifth house of creativity, probably someone who always works on making their words better, taking more classes. I bet he did not just start writing and then just write. I bet he was like rewriting drafts and always, obsessed with making it better. Because that Scorpio brings an obsession to whatever it touches. So now moving on to that midheaven. Now this is the real kicker, you guys. This is going to be the real major thing here for the money story. So we have the midheaven in Aries. Aries midheaven will be confident, will go in a new direction, will forge something new, or they're going to have Mars type topics be infused in their work. And so especially when someone is creative, when they have an Aries midheaven, it's either going to be like action packed, like I would, if I knew someone was a writer with an Aries midheaven, I would predict they would be writing things that have a lot of suspense, like police novels or where someone gets kidnapped and they have to find them, that have like just that like action energy and they're very active. Now that Aries that Mars, which is the planet that rules Aries, is in the 12th house. And the 12th house, while I'm not really making a connection with something in the 12th that has to do with writing, being a writer, the one thing that it does make sense is that it is private. And we already saw that money ruler in the 3rd house of communication. So we have communication, creativity, and privacy. What is that but being a writer? Now, one thing to just be aware of for his chart is he has Jupiter, his 6th house planet, trining Mars, his midheaven ruler. So when you see a positive connection between any of your money planets like this is a good thing to see for being capable in career, the ability to, work, do the work and have it, somehow there's some kind of ease and flow here. Now, with that Mars in the 12th house, this is not necessarily the easiest placement for the person to have, because it can make it hard for them to be motivated because your motivation is hidden from you. You don't know what makes you motivated. And then this is in an intercepted sign as well. So he may find he's only motivated to write with that Jupiter in that 5th house, which is probably why he writes, right? So someone could want to be a writer, but they don't necessarily have the motivation. So we're going to look at one more chart here, which is the chart of Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm trying to choose people who are not just singers, actors, because there's tons of charts on those people, but most of you watching this are not trying to be famous singers or actors. So I want to try to include some other things. So we're looking at Gary Vaynerchuk here. For anyone who does not know, Gary V is a well-known businessman, has had Wine Library, was kind of a pioneer in YouTube, and is now more of a speaker, has a media company. So we're going to start on his 2nd house ruled by Libra. Libra on the 2nd is going to tell us that, well, this is someone who might have expensive taste. They might have refined taste. Okay, where is Venus? Venus is in that 1st house, a personal brand. Bam! He is a personal brand, and he helps other people create their personal brands. I didn't plan this. So then other things to know about his 2nd house is he has Uranus, Mercury, and the sun there. So, having a lot of planets doesn't necessarily guarantee success always, but it does usually mean that area of life is significant. Now, for some people, it's significant because it's a train wreck. So you could have a packed 2nd house and be rich. You could have a packed 2nd house and be super poor. It doesn't mean you're going to have money or not have money. But we do have Uranus here, which means he could have sudden changes where, bam, he makes money. His money could have come in where, and I know his story a little bit, enough to know that he worked many years in his family business before it made money. And he actually kind of preaches to put a lot of value in before you take anything out. And he has Uranus and Scorpio in the 2nd house. He also has Mercury and the sun there. So we see that, one, it's an important area of life. Money is, finances are. Mercury, communication. He could work at something where he communicates. And it's in Scorpio, communicates in a way that helps people transform. So we're just applying the things that I said in the video to this chart. Which, for those of you who don't know, he's like a speaker. This is one of the major things he does is communicates, speaks about not just money, but how to be happy in work and how to do the work, really, is kind of one of the things he talks about a lot. So now the 6th house in Pisces, ruled by Neptune, we're going to go to the 3rd house, which is where he has his Neptune, the 3rd house of communication. Okay, 6th house ruler in a house of communicating in a sign of Sagittarius. Anywhere you have Sagittarius, where it's never enough. There's never enough talking. So this is a good sign for someone who wants to sell, who wants to make money, who wants to be successful, because they can do the communication. He might feel like I can never talk enough, with his 6th house ruler, the planet of what you do every day, sitting in the 3rd house. Now, another thing he has is he has his moon in the 6th house. People with their moon in the 6th house can be very kind and nurturing to their employees or their coworkers. I almost said caretakers. They can be like a caretaker to their coworkers. They can be someone who just people feel emotionally supported by when they're working with them. So this makes me feel like the things he says about kindness are probably true. That he probably really does uphold that kind of ideal in his actual dealings with people. Like that he would be someone who I would expect that if you met him in real life and you actually had a conversation with him, it would feel good. You might feel emotionally supported. Now that doesn't mean he's going to be like, your therapist, but just that people with moon in the 6th really care also about doing good work. So moon in the 6th by itself doesn't guarantee riches or success, but it does mean that you will not put out work that you think is crap. You are going to do your absolute best. You're going to put your heart and soul into what you do. And so if you're doing the right thing, it can help you be successful because you're going to be willing to do the work. Sometimes you can be a workaholic with this placement. And I'm not throwing shade on Gary. He promotes like working, and then he promotes like working till 2 a.m. Like, what are you doing between 11 and 2 or whatever he says, or 6 p.m. and 2 when you get off work. So that's like one of the things he says all the time. And that's not surprising for someone with moon in the 6th because they care so much about doing good work. They usually love working. It depends actually. It can be if that moon is afflicted, then you may hate working. But again, you care about the quality of work that you do. So while it doesn't guarantee money, it's like one of the elements of success, is to care about what you do so you do a good job, right? So now moving on to his midheaven, which is Gemini. No surprise that someone who speaks for a living and sells for a living has a Gemini midheaven because Gemini is the sign of the salesperson. It's a sign of the teacher, and teaching in the sense of understanding the level of your student so you know exactly what piece of information to give them. If you have a Gemini midheaven, the way to master this midheaven is to really learn how to listen to the people you're helping, listen to your customers, listen to the people you're serving, and be able to talk to them from their level and to only give them the information they need. So it really is about just the awareness of like, where is this person's thinking and what next step do I need to give them? What little tidbit of information do I need to give this person to move them forward just a little bit further? So that's what Gemini can do. It's also communication, speaking, writing. It's also communication, speaking, writing, anything like that. And so the ruler of the Gemini midheaven is Mercury, and it is in the 2nd house. So we did talk about that already, what that means in Scorpio. And he also has Mars here in the 10th house. Mars in the 10th is going to make you motivated. You are motivated for career success. You have the drive, the determination to reach that. And I'm thinking that trines down to Uranus. So, that's a really beautiful thing to see, that 10th house planet trining down to a 2nd house planet. Now, don't get all discouraged if you don't have a trine. It doesn't mean you can't succeed, but trines make it easier. So it's easier for this person to work really hard and then to do the hard work they need to do to have some kind of sudden change in their money, right? So we see that with Gary V too, where he works hard for his money and he has the motivation and the dedication to keep going. Even though he's changed his whole life, he's not retiring anytime soon. He talks about buying the jets. And, Uranus there in the 2nd too, it's like Uranus energizes things. So his Mars in that 10th house, even though it's in Cancer, which is not known as being the best place for Mars because sometimes people with Mars in Cancer don't like confrontation. So it can be challenging for Mars in Cancer to deal with that. That's a side note. But that Uranus is just feeding that Mars with energy, So that Mars in that 10th and that Moon in that 6th, this person wants to work, and then that Mars and Moon make a square, which sometimes are challenging, but usually, successful people have squares in their chart because we need the challenge to like push back against to get successful. It's like we need the tension to be able to push against that tension and go to a high level. They're like slingshots. Squares in the chart are like slingshots that if you know how to pull them back the right way and you know the right moment to let go, you know what obstacles to push against and where to apply your effort, that square can be insanely energizing. And those people, it's almost like you need an outlet, and oftentimes the outlet ends up getting you somewhere. There's this inner feeling of almost like not satisfied until you like reach a higher place. So those are the example charts for this video. So that is what I have for the video on your money story and astrology. You know, you can go back to whatever house your 2nd, 6th, and 10th ruler are in to get kind of a better idea based on the houses of the different possible fields you could work in. Now, if you're feeling overwhelmed and you're like, well, I don't know which one, this video is not here to tell you what job to do. It's here to help clarify the things you already kind of are thinking about, right? To help you sort of point you in the right direction. So I don't recommend making a full-on career decision from this video. This was just like a quick, fun video to learn a little bit more about money. So let me know in a comment below if this video was helpful. If you have questions, I love hearing from you. Make sure you hit subscribe so you get notified when the next video on money blocks comes out. I also do energy reports every new and full moon, so check those out as well. And keep in mind, there is a sale right now, 50% off of readings. Click the link below if you want to get in on that. It goes through the 27th. And if you are watching this video after, just get on my email list and then you'll get notified anytime I do a sale. So that is what I have for this video, you guys. I hope it helped you understand your money story a little bit better. And I will see you all in the next video.